today on Ag News Daily.
Around 80% of our work now at AgriSafe is really focused on all of the behavioral wellness topics, those things that farmers and ranchers encounter on the day that cause them to feel those burdens and that heavy stress.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. I just received the first ever compliment that Delaney has ever given.
That is not even true.
It's just you're wearing such a nice shirt today.
You are. You usually have on your farmer garb.
I know. And other farmers like us across the Midwest have been seeing some scattered showers that moved out after some heavy rain slowed harvest progress this week. That moisture did help ease some of the drought conditions in some areas, but combines are staying parked only in those certain spots. A lot of combines are running. We'll see a lot of that going into the weekend as harvest will resume as that weather stays clear. In the central and southern plains, recent rainfall hasn't been ideal for corn and soybean harvest, but it has helped newly planted winter wheat get established. Forecasters are now predicting drier conditions that'll settle in through much of next week, giving all farmers a better chance to catch up on their field work. Now up north in the northern plains, they'll stay mostly dry and warm, only with a few light showers possible. And that will help and benefit those harvests continuing as crops continue to mature. Looking ahead, the rest of September is shaping up to be warmer than normal, with much of the country running 5 to 8 degrees above average. The long-term outlook suggests drought will likely worsen in the southern plains and in the Delta, while a La Nina could bring colder, snowier winter in the Northwest, but keep much of the Midwest here dry. For now, farmers can expect a window of favorable harvest conditions before that next pattern shift in October, according to Eric Snodgrass. I know my daughter, Gabriella, was excited because the last hurricane was named Gabrielle.
After her. That's fun. Well, this week's latest crop progress conditions report showed slight changes in the week with overall progress close to the 5-year average. Corn is rated now 67% good to excellent, down 1% from the week prior. Development is just slightly behind last year's pace, with 91% of the crop in the dense stage and 56% mature. And harvest is underway with 11% now complete. Soybean conditions slipped to 61% good to excellent, down 2 percentage points from the previous week. About 61% of the soybeans are dropping leaves, and 9% have been harvested so far. Meanwhile, spring wheat harvest is 96% complete, right in line with the seasonal average. And I'm sure we'll see those numbers continue to jump next week on the show.
And not great headline coming next. Chinese soybean buyers have booked at least 10 cargoes, upwards of maybe 20 now, from Argentina after the country scrapped their export taxes, according to traders speaking with Reuters. This move gives Argentina a competitive edge and deals another blow to U.S. farmers who remain shut out of their top export market amid ongoing trade disputes with China. Some traders say China has already booked up to 15 cargoes for fourth quarter delivery months that are typically dominated by U.S. soybeans. U.S. growers are harvesting what's expected to be a 4.3 billion bushels this fall, with no orders yet from China, their biggest customer. In a normal year, China buys more than half of U.S. soybean exports, but shipments have collapsed, falling from 985 million bushels last year to just 218 million through August. Brazil has filled much of that gap, setting export records with China. Analysts do say that soybeans are likely to be central in any U.S.-China trade agreement, but progress has been slow. Midwestern negotiators have speculated that they will meet again this week, with few details being released, while farmers warn they're already missing key sales windows. Jim McCormick from agmarket.net says the U.S. soybeans for September, October, and much of November have essentially been replaced with those South American supplies.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that a little bit more here coming up in our market section. But in other top headlines this week, Mexico confirmed a new case of New World screwworm in Nuevo Leon, less than 70 miles from the Texas border late last week. Officials call it the northernmost detection yet during the outbreak and the most serious threat so far to the American cattle industry. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says the infected animal, an 8-month-old cow, had been moved north from a region with known cases. Secretary Rollins says protecting the U.S. herd is non-negotiable national security priority. She also says America will not rely on Mexico to defend its food supply and pledged decisive action under USDA's 5-part response plan. USDA has already closed U.S. ports to cattle, bison, and horse imports from Mexico, and now stepped up surveillance with nearly 8,000 traps across southern states, and begun building facilities in Texas to produce and release millions of sterile flies each week to help wipe out the pest. Secretary Rollins also says more announcements to support ranchers and rebuild the U.S. cattle supply are coming later this week into next week. Meanwhile, USDA is urging residents along the border to carefully check pets as well as livestock for unusual wounds or larvae and to report any suspected cases immediately. While rare in people, officials warn screwworms can also infect humans. NCBA CEO Colin Woodall says time is running short, urging USDA to speed up sterile fly production and explore new technologies like electronic beams to combat the pest. Texas Animal Health Commission Director Bud Dingus told Brownfield the infected heifer was likely moved from southern Mexico. Not evidence of a fly population that far north, but producers must step up daily inspections since infections can develop within hours. He also says the state has more than 100 traps in place, is ready to activate an emergency response plan, and is working closely with the USDA and Mexico to contain that threat.
When you said use light, I can only think of Austin Powers when he says fire the laser.
Well, they might be doing that.
More cattle news. The national cattle on feed inventory totaled 11.1 million head as of September 1st, 1% below a year ago, which is closely in line with the trade expected. USDA's latest cattle on feed report was released Friday, September 19th, points to historically tight U.S. supplies, with some signs that producers may be retaining heifers to rebuild the herd. State by state, numbers varied. Texas was down 9%. Oklahoma was off 5%. Kansas, Iowa, and Nebraska were all slightly above last year for placements. Placements in feedlots during August totaled 1.78 million head, 10% lower than 2024, while marking just 1.57 million head, down 14%. Lowest August figure since 1996. DTN stated the drop in placements across nearly every weight category in the states shows just how thin supplies are, with only Arizona and Washington reporting year-over-year gains. Stewart calls the report bullish, noting that the U.S. beef cow herd remains at a multi-decade low and southern border is still closed to Mexican cattle imports. With tight cattle supplies and limited placements, analysts say data highlights continued pressure on this beef market, and that could stay here heading into the fall.
Well, as we take a look at some more USDA reports, milk production continues to climb, according to the latest USDA NASS report released earlier this week. In August, the 24 major milk-producing states turned out 18.8 billion pounds of milk, which is up 3.3% from a year ago. Output per cow averaged just over 2,000 pounds, 28 pounds more than last August, and USDA says there were just over 9 million milk cows on farms, 172,000 more than last year and slightly higher than in July. Meanwhile, U.S. egg production fell, according to another NASS report that was also released earlier this week. Farmers produced 8.9 billion eggs in August, down 2% from 2024, which included 7.6 billion table eggs and 1.3 billion hatching eggs. The number of layers averaged 364 million, 1% higher than last year. Production per 100 layers slipped as well, totaling just under 2,500 eggs. And on September 1st, the total U.S. layer flock stood at 366 million birds, with each averaging about 78.6 eggs per day.
Prop 12 news. Missouri-based Triumph Foods has become the first pork processor to sue California over Proposition 12, the law that set those minimum housing standards for pigs, veal calves, and egg layers. CEO Matt England said the national food supply chain depends on consistent federal ruling, not a patchwork of state regulations. Triumph's case argues Proposition 12 violates the U.S. Constitution's Dormant Commerce Clause, which prevents states from unfairly restricting interstate trade. The company points to its earlier legal success against a similar law in Massachusetts. Triumph says the USDA-inspected plants, federally regulated processors, should not face added state-level requirements. Based in St. Joseph's, Missouri, the company produces more than 1.5 billion pounds of pork annually and employs over 2,400 workers. So it's good to see a company fighting back.
It'll be interesting to see how this court case shakes out because it will set precedent for all others in the future. But September's Rural Main Street Index shows the regional economy slipping below growth neutral for the seventh time this year, according to the report released late last week. Farmland prices fell for the 16th time in 17 months, and farm equipment sales dropped for the 25th consecutive month. Economist Ernie Goss says farmers remain hesitant to buy new machinery, instead turning to used equipment and repairs. Nearly 3 out of 4 ag bankers surveyed said tariff increases are hurting farm operations, while most pointed to falling commodity prices as the biggest threat to banking over the next year. Goss notes corn, soybeans, and wheat are all below break-even for many producers, leaving yields as the key factor for farm profitability. The report comes as the Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time since December, bringing the prime rate down to 7.25%. Goss says additional cuts could lower it further into 2026, offering some relief, but rural bankers remain pessimistic about near-term growth, and we got indication from the Fed this week that another rate cut was not likely in sight, Tanner.
Yeah, I saw that, as well as this new report that was released late last week from the National Grain and Feed Association that shows the grain and feed industry contributes more than $401 billion annually to the U.S. economy. The NGFA president and CEO, Mike, states that the 2025 Harvest Economy Study highlights the sector's reach across the supply chain, from country elevators to feed mills and biofuel plants, transportation, and equipment providers. The analysis, conducted by John Dunham and Associates, found the industry supports more than 1.16 million jobs, equating to $86 billion in wages across rural America. Nearly 9,700 facilities directly employ 175,000 workers, an average annual pay of $84,000, according to Seifert. That says the impact extends beyond these direct jobs, generating nearly $33 billion in taxes for federal, state, and local governments. Notes also report here that the state-by-state breakdown showing the industry's significance in which congressional districts. He says the data will help policymakers better understand the role that grain and feed play in rural economies and supporting U.S. food security. So good data there.
Well, some other USDA headlines as USDA this week announced a new 3-point plan to support American farmers and exporters, unveiled by Secretary Rollins and Undersecretary Luke Lindberg at the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture meeting. The plan includes the America First Trade Promotion Program, launching in fiscal year 2026, a new model of trade missions and efforts to revitalize export finance through credit guarantees for foreign buyers. Undersecretary Lindberg says the plan is designed to quickly strengthen buyer-seller relationships in international markets. The new trade mission model, called Trade Reciprocity for U.S. manufacturers and producers, aims to put farmers on the ground where the president has negotiated new market access. The plan also provides $5.5 billion in credit guarantees to help foreign buyers finance American agricultural exports. The America First Trade Promotion Program will invest $285 million in trade promotion programs beginning next year. And Dan Hallstrom, president and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation, says that adding additional funding will help increase demand and value for American products such as beef, pork, and lamb, while supporting rural communities and the nation's agricultural economy.
Well, big USDA news set this week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is proposing changes to strengthen stocking requirements for retailers participating in the SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. The Secretary, Brooke Rollins, says the new rule would require stores to carry 7 varieties in each of the 4 staple food categories. That's dairy, protein, grains, and fruits, and vegetables. More than doubling the current requirement, this move is aimed at reducing fraud and abuse while increasing access to healthier food options for SNAP participants. This proposal also closes loopholes that let snack foods count as staples and simplifies how foods are classified, making it easier for retailers to comply with the USDA and for the USDA to enforce. The USDA says nearly 266,000 retailers currently redeem over $96 billion in SNAP benefits each year, and the changes are part of the administration's broader effort to promote nutrition and curb chronic disease. Public comments for this rule are now being accepted through November 24th, 2025 on regulations.gov. USDA emphasizes integrity and healthier options. Farm and community groups warn that cuts to SNAP could harm rural communities. Vanessa Garcia Blanco, the National Young Farmers Coalition, says SNAP supports local farmers and strengthens communities, and more than 600 agricultural organizations recently urged Congress to reverse the proposed cuts in the next Farm Bill. Senate Ag Committee Chairman John Boozman says the legislation will ensure the program receives the reform that it needs. A lot of updates there.
And one more update here from the USDA as well. USDA Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden is evaluating potential locations for the department's new regional hubs as part of its ongoing reorganization plan. The plan, announced back in July, would relocate more than half of USDA's Washington, D.C. staff to hubs in Kansas City, Raleigh, Indianapolis, Fort Collins, and Salt Lake City. Vaden says he was visiting facilities in Missouri this week, according to Brownfield, to ensure that locations are suitable before asking employees to move. The hubs aim to bring USDA closer to farmers and stakeholders on the ground, but critics, including the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy and the Union of Concerned Scientists, warned the move could disrupt experienced staff and research operations. Former Senate Agriculture Committee Chair Debbie Stabenow says stability and institutional knowledge are essential for farmers, cautioning that arbitrary staff relocations risk losing that expertise critical to agriculture science and programs. Vaden says the USDA is reviewing public comments and the reorganization, with comments period running through September 30th, followed then by a tribal consultation in mid-October. He also notes feedback from private businesses, research labs, and tribal governments will help shape the final plan, which aims to maintain USDA services while improving efficiency and support for farmers nationwide.
Yes, finally, some non-USDA headlines to share this week. They were busy.
They were busy, I guess.
Global farm equipment manufacturer Claas says that it will be moving production of its 2026 Lexion 8000 series combines for Canada from the U.S. to Germany, according to a statement that was sent to Brownfield earlier this week. The company cites rising costs and trade uncertainty due to tariffs, explaining the move will help maintain competitiveness in the Canadian market. Claas emphasizes that all the combines for U.S. farmers will continue to be assembled in Omaha, Nebraska, using parts sourced from the U.S. The company also says prices for American customers will remain stable through the end of 2025 despite the tariffs.
Well, we also have some other headlines here from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. In collaboration with some farm groups, they've released an updated study on the benefits of precision agriculture in a report earlier this month in September. The report shows that technology adoption on farms is boosting yields, reducing input costs, and helping stabilize the nation's food supply. I don't think any of those things come as a surprise. But highlights include that a 5% increase in annual crop production, with potential for another 6% if adoption grows. Precision ag has also helped avoid planting 11.4 million acres of cropland, roughly 5 times the size of Yellowstone National Park, while reducing herbicide and fertilizer use and improving environmental stewardship. A new case study on targeted spray applications shows potential savings of 50 to 90% in herbicide use. That's definitely something to write home about. And AAM officials say the findings underscore the economic and environmental value of precision agriculture. Kurt Blades, AEM Senior Vice President, says, quote, farmers are already seeing meaningful gains and society benefits from healthier soils, more responsible water use, and fewer emissions. The report provides a clear case for advancing policies, investment, and infrastructure that supports the continued growth of U.S. precision agriculture in the U.S. And Tanner, I'm guessing that report was not just for folks in agriculture. I'm guessing they were using that for some folks outside of the industry as well.
Well, news from San Luis Obispo County in California saw the value of its ag industry decline by more than $85 million in 2024. That was according to the Department of Ag and Weights and Measures results. Wine grapes saw the steepest drop, with their value plunging from a record $323 million to $194 million, comparing 23 to 24, a 40% drop according to the report. The new crop report shows the total agricultural production reached $1.016 billion, which was 8% down from 2023. Despite that drop, the 2024 markets on the fourth consecutive year of the county's drop exceeding $1 billion. Officials say varied microclimates and relatively healthy wet season allowed most crops to thrive across the county, even with periods of heavy rainfall early in the year. The Department of Ag and Weights and Measures notes that the overall production remains strong, underscoring the resiliency of the San Luis Obispo County and its diverse agricultural industry. Say that 3 times fast.
That's a tongue twister. But as we head into key planting season this week, our own Michelle Stangler sat down with Linda Emanuel with the AgriSafe Network to talk about the importance of both farm safety and health. Linda draws on her own experiences growing up on her family's farm in Nebraska and her career as a registered nurse to support farmers, especially when it comes to mental health and farm safety during these key times of year. So let's dive into that conversation now.
Well, harvest is really underway across the Midwest and beyond. What better way to kick off or complete the National Farm Safety and Health Week with an AgriSafe Network staff member, Linda Emanuel. Linda, thanks so much for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and the organization you're here with.
Oh, I'd be glad to. So I am a registered nurse and a farm producer here in East Central Nebraska. I have been part of a farm family operation since birth. I grew up in agriculture, married a farmer, and now we are blessed to have sons come back and farm with us. We are a multi-generational family farm growing the ever popular soybeans and corn and seed soybeans. In my professional life as a registered nurse, I'm an agricultural health liaison for the national nonprofit AgriSafe Network. And a little bit about AgriSafe. AgriSafe was formed over 20 years ago in Iowa by rural nurses who pulled their resources together along with public health professionals. They all came together at the table and said, we have got some really good information coming out of these universities studying agricultural health. Let's form an organization that can really offer these resources to farmers and ranchers and their families. And what they thought it was going to be just an Iowa-based organization, they quickly learned there was a need nationally, and therefore AgriSafe was born. Their message they like to put out, kind of our mantra, is protecting the people who feed the world, which really resonates well with me. And so what we are is an occupational health resource for farmers and ranchers. And we serve 2 populations. We serve the farmers, ranchers, of course, and their families and communities. And we also serve healthcare professionals. What we've learned is that those healthcare professionals that treat farmers and ranchers who come into their clinics, hospitals, don't always understand the culture and the risks that are associated with the hard work that farmers and ranchers do. So we have those 2 audiences that we work well with, and it's a great organization that I get to work with and be with every day, and I'm just glad that I can be part of it.
Now, you mentioned that you help on the family farm, corn and soybeans in Nebraska. Tell us how that's going for your family this year.
Well, it has started, right? The combines are starting to really rev up, and everybody's getting excited around the countryside. We, this year, and I think this is a little bit across the Midwest, a general trend is that it's been wet, really wet. So some different challenges this year in trying to get into those fields, get the work done that we need to get done, and some different fungicide diseases too that have affected the yields. So every year it's a challenge, but yeah, we're always up for it.
So of course it's a busy time of the year, but safety, might or might not be top of mind for some farmers. What are some of those misconceptions that you often talk to farmers and those healthcare professionals about, of how to even first approach that conversation? Then we can get into some of maybe those misconceptions.
Right. Safety is not a real and attractive topic, right? Farmers and ranchers are really driven to get the work done, and there's a lot that goes on in the day, and those goals, those tasks they have in their head that this is what we're going to accomplish today completely can change and flip, and at the end of the day looks completely different. So what we try to do here at AgriSafe is instill a safety mantra within them with every task that they do all the time. And I know farmers and ranchers, some have accepted the narrative that it's just a dangerous business. It's a dangerous occupation. And they kind of push that aside. And for many, 99% of the time, they really do try to do those all important safety tasks ahead of time. And so at AgriSafe, we really encourage folks to change that narrative, to be a change agent on your operation, to take those meaningful steps to create a safer environment for everyone. I think most of us that have worked in agriculture can certainly bring back stories of folks that have been severely injured or very unfortunately lost to death. And that death affects not only that farming operation, but it can also affect communities. It's a ripple effect. And so we really want our farmers and ranchers to change that mindset just a bit, to think, okay, what do I need to do to get ready for the task for the day? It's kind of a stop, think, act type thought process. And so that's why safety is important. And we often say here at AgriSafe, a healthy farmer is a safe farmer.
I don't think I've heard of that before. So thanks for sharing that. If you look at, these past few years and here into 2025, is there something that's more of a focus this year as you look at maybe past research or trends that you're seeing that's a common maybe problem happening on farms?
So when we look at the data nationwide and as well as regionally, it's going to look just a bit different within each region, each type of agriculture. Here in the Midwest, what we see frequently, and especially here in Nebraska, is a high rate of tractor rollovers and runovers, as well as ATV accidents. ATV is an upcoming trend where folks are experiencing multiple injuries and unfortunately deaths. So we work closely, AgriSafe works very closely with various universities studying the data, looking at the research. What can we do as an organization to better prepare farmers and ranchers to know what those injuries are, and then some strategies to mitigate those injuries. So, of course, if I had to think off the top of my head, it's tractor rollover runovers and ATV accidents. Also on that list is mental stress. And that has been a huge focus. Around 80% of our work now at AgriSafe is really focused on all of the behavioral wellness topics, those things that farmers and ranchers encounter on the day that cause them to feel those burdens and that heavy stress. The mind, the body, the spirit are all connected. And if something is off in one of those areas of our health, more than likely it's going to affect something else. So we do have a heavy focus right now in just some of those basic things to keeping ourselves well. Is good sleep, right? That good sleep hygiene before you go to bed. Do those things so that you can have a sound, nice, quality, deep sleep. Good nutrition. Harvest is a tough time to eat healthily, right? That Casey's pizza that tastes really great and is a quick go-to, it's probably not the healthiest for you to consume on a daily basis. So we work with University of Nebraska Extension, has a great program out there called Food in the Field, and the dietitians there put together a meal plan for farmers and ranchers that those portable meals they can take with them. As well as good communication between your farm family members, clear communication, where I'm going to be, what's going on, trying to help folks remember to take those all important rest breaks, right? The wheels start turning and those farmers have a hard time stopping the process, especially if the rhythm is going well in the field. So, if I had to say that there was a priority area for us here at AgriSafe, it really is, of course, we keep an very close eye on the trends, but a lot of it is right now focused on our mental health.
So with that, do you think safety and healthy goes hand in hand?
Always. Always, right? It's as farmers start their day and they kind of think through the day, what's all needed. Again, it's that stop, think, and act to prepare ahead of time, to know what's going to happen, and checking in with yourselves and checking in with your neighbors. Take care of your neighbors as well. Farming communities are really resilient, and they're strong and cohesive for many. And so it's keeping an eye on your neighbor. If you see something going on, maybe that looks a little unusual, have a conversation with that neighbor. Whether it's something that concerns you in their mental health or maybe something physically. So in answer to your question, does safety and health go hand in hand? Absolutely.
Well, Linda, it's National Farm Safety and Health Week, like we've mentioned. What are some of those programs that you've offered? And then touch upon, why did you choose that content to share?
Appreciate the question. So every year nationally, the National Farm Center has a week that they observe for farmers and ranchers that talk about their health and safety. And this has been going on since 1940. Right. President Roosevelt instituted this week as an important week to recognize the agricultural industry and all the work that's involved with it, as well as those dangers and exposures. So this has been going on for a very long time. And this week, we have webinars that are all built around a theme. This year's theme is Safety First, Avoid the Worst. And so the week is just chock full of different webinars that address daily themes. It's 5 days worth of content. And so within these webinars, we talk about things such as equipment and rural roadway safety. And then we switch to health and wellness, and then talk about generations of farming. For many of those farm families, over 95% are generations working together. And we have that on our family farm. We are 3 generations working together. My 87-year-old father-in-law is still a valid part of our operation. And then we talk about confined spaces. And then lastly, we round out the week with ATV and UTV safety. And so these webinars are presented by those researchers, those experts that are in the field doing the work and looking at the issues and really want to make a difference by sharing the education that they have. So this is why this week is important to us. Again, it's putting it right back out there again for folks, is that constant reminder that they really need to look at how they can be safe within themselves and within their operations.
So how did you choose that content to present? What was some of that understanding? Like, you see that farm generational planning is such a huge need for the farming community. What were some of those factors that you consider that these were needs to share?
Part of it is looking at those national trends, right? What's valid and current right now that's going on? Things that happened 10 years ago are probably not current to what's going on now in agriculture. Agriculture is a constantly evolving industry, right? There's new technologies coming out all the time. And so we pride ourselves in keeping up on what's going on and keeping our thumb on the radars there to know what we need to respond to. And AgriSafe does pride themselves on addressing those emerging issues. So looking at those generations of farming, farm family dynamics are unique. Not too many other folks can say that they work with the same people that they live with, and it is not just work, it's a lifestyle. So within those webinars on Wednesday, there's an expert talking about communication coaching to support farm harmony. As females on the operation, usually we're the ones that hear a lot of the conflict and the strife that's involved in that day-to-day work. And so really this gal is encouraging folks to consider the clear communication tactics and just understanding one another's their way of thinking and such. So, and we also, when we're talking about confined spaces, that can be anywhere from hog barns to dairy barns. And as well as we're looking at natural disasters. Natural disasters are continuing to affect agriculture in many ways. So there's some really good content out there for everyone.
Well, how can people see some of these resources and connect with you if they want to reach out?
Oh, absolutely. So these webinars are free. All the folks have to do is get on our website, which is agrisafe.org. And you'll find on our homepage a free registration. These webinars are being recorded, so folks can, once they register, can go back into our learning lab. And when you're in that learning lab, all we ask for is your email address, and then we'll get you connected to those webinars that you're interested in. And you can look through the listing, through the catalog, choose what you feel like is important to you at that time, and then sit back and enjoy the webinar. We also have it available for Spanish interpretation, which is very important for some ranchers. And then there's a badge that's offered for folks if they're interested to put on their signature line if they watch a specific number of webinars. And these webinars will be available for a couple of months afterwards. I'd also encourage folks to take a look at our website. We have a ton of resources out there for every population within agriculture, including a podcast. I get to host it's called Talking Total Farmer Health Podcast. I'm putting a shameless plug out there. And it's got a nice host library of bite-sized topics. We present it in information so that farmers and ranchers and their families can listen to it while they're on the road. Just some things that things they may have not thought about before when it comes to health and safety.
Well, Linda, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, it was a true pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thanks to Michelle for doing that. And Delaney, you teased us earlier about what might be happening in the markets. So what have you been seeing?
Well, this week we are seeing, of course, markets really paying attention to what's going on in the field, but also what's going on beyond our borders. Weekly export sales this week saw mixed opportunities for grains as U.S. exporters sold just over 75 million bushels of corn last week, putting U.S. on a record pace for export sales there. The top buyer continues to be Mexico as well as unknown destinations. But meanwhile, in soybeans, export totaled just over 26 million bushels, putting soybeans on track for one of the slowest starts to the marketing year, although we're just 3 weeks into this new marketing year. It does highlight the greater trend we've been talking about, which is China continues to leave a major hole in the market. As we talked about earlier, Argentina placed a temporary pause on export taxes earlier this week, and that program is designed to suspend export taxes on grain and oilseeds until October 31st, or until exporters hit $7 billion in aggregated sales, whichever came first. So sales hit that $7 billion level within the first 3 days, and a lot of that was due to soybean products or byproducts, which a lot of that went to China, continuing to emphasize their desire or lack of desire really to do business with the United States. So after just 3 days, they hit that number, they paused that export program, and then late Thursday night, Argentina actually made an announcement saying they're going to reopen that program. So we're going to probably see more soybeans heading to China. Corn, soybeans, and wheat started the week under some major pressure. And while corn has been clawing its way back this week, wheat and beans have really been struggling. And then on the livestock side of things, even with that New World screwworm case coming up so close to the border and continuing to see consolidated herds, we saw some struggling numbers there in live cattle and feeder cattle as well. So that's a quick market update for this week.
Yeah, I know our local sale barn saw record prices on 3, 4, and 5 weight calves being sold.
At the local level, I think we're still continuing to see that strength, but on the national futures border, CBOT, we're seeing some weakness there. So
that's right. Well, listeners, we know you're probably in the field, so we appreciate you turning us on as always. But let us know how it's going. Send us a picture of when you shove the stick forward in the combine to make that yield look extremely great. Snap a picture, tag us in it. We'd love to share those across our listener base. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms and send topic and idea suggestions to us as well. But for this week, Delaney, what do you say? Should we let him go?
Let's let him go.